I'm pleased to welcome all of you to our session this morning, and especially Paula Severson from the Bank of Sun Prairie. Paula's a branch manager at Cottage Grove and an assistant vice president. And Paula, I imagine you've seen quite a few of these scams, right? I mean, they're out there going like crazy. Let me turn it over to you, Paula, right away. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into this, and then take it away, okay?
Thank you so much, Mike. Well, I'm excited to be here with all of you. Unfortunately, this seminar came as a result of seeing a number of my bank customers getting scammed. And one of the things that I vowed to do was to do everything I can to try to talk to people of all ages about the fraud that's out there and get in on the ground level, because it's easier for us to prevent fraud than it is to try to get your money back afterwards. So in my daily role at the bank, as Mike said, I'm the branch manager of the Cottage Grove location. I have a team of 8 staff over here. I oversee all of the branch operations. And so I oversee the team, the tellers, the bankers, any transactions that are happening here in a daily basis. And I just work with a lot of customers. So just super excited to be here with all of you today. So we're going to jump in because I have a lot of content to get to. If you have questions while I'm speaking, go ahead and throw those in the chat, and we'll certainly try to get back to those just as soon as we can. And then I will also leave time for questions and answers at the end. Also, don't feel like you have to take a lot of notes. I've given these to Mike, so he has a copy of the slides as well as all the websites I'm going to reference, so he has that as well. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen and we are going to get started here. All right. How does that look, Mike? Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Perfect. All right, so these numbers are kind of outdated already, unfortunately. And so in 2021, the elder abuse and fraud showed a 74% of increase in elder abuse. So in 2021, over 90,000 seniors were scammed out of $1.7 billion. That's a lot of money. And that's only what's reported. Scams are happening every day, and most seniors don't tell anyone. But we know that the average loss per victim was $18,000, and there were over 3,000 people who lost $100,000 or more. So this is happening a ton. Before we get started, I kind of wanted to touch on debit cards. I don't know how many of you have debit cards, maybe a quick hand raise. If you use them, many of you are from the generation that used to pay with cash. And I will tell you, we're coming back to that as a society. Cash is king. So I'm going to touch on debit cards just a little bit here for a moment, because there's a lot of things that happen with debit cards. And it went too far. Sorry.
Oh, I'm seeing a little Zoom message pop up there. Is that on your end, or?
It is.
Oh,
it
okay.
is.
Your Zoom will probably crash if you get rid of that, I suppose.
Oh, yeah. Well, I just did, so hopefully it doesn't boot me off. All right. So my debit card slide is not showing. Let me just get this up here. I apologize. All right, here we go. Technology is great until it's not. All right, debit cards. So be very, very careful using debit cards online. I tell my bank customers and my family, don't use a debit card at all. If you want to buy something online, use a credit card. There's a lot more protection for you with your credit card. Plus, if somebody hacks your debit card, they're going to steal all your money. So even my daughter, she's 16, from time to time wants to buy things online. I put it on my credit card, just to be safe. With debit cards, if you are going to use them, monitor your accounts daily if possible. So if your bank provides online banking and you do that, great. If you want to call your bank, definitely do that as well. If you're ever using it at an ATM, You might have heard the phrase skimming. Before you stick your card in the slot, go ahead and give it a tug. If it's loose, if it moves at all, there may be a skimmer on there. Don't use that ATM and notify the bank that you think there's something wrong with the ATM. If you notice a weird charge on your account, even if it's $1, notify your bank. What many scammers do when they get your debit card number is they're going to test it out by trying to put through a $1 transaction on your account. And they do that intentionally to make sure the debit card number is correct. And then what they do is then they'll send through hundreds of dollars after that point. So the minute you see a $1, even a 0, if it's an attempt, call your bank. They can shut down your card. If you've been notified that maybe a provider you use, maybe it's an online prescription service, anything like that has had a data breach, you're going to want to make sure to shut down your debit card if it was tied to any sort of company that's had a data breach. And then lastly, utilize card services like Card Valet. So here at Bank of Sun Prairie, we have an app that you put on your phone called Card Valet. And one of the things it allows you to do is it allows you to lock your debit card when you're not using it. So you want to make sure to use any services that your bank might provide like that. But again, with debit cards, and I shouldn't be telling you this because this is where banks make money when you use your debit card, but if you can avoid it, definitely pay cash where you can, or definitely, a credit card. So let's touch on just some of the identity theft red flags. How do you know when your identity has been stolen and somebody's, using your name? So if you apply for a new loan or a credit, card or something like that and get denied based on your credit, that's a red flag. Denial of any services. So let's say you move to a new facility and you have rent or, your utilities and you get denied for that. Unusual charges on your credit card, unusual changes in your credit report, and unusual calls from debtors or collection agencies that you've never dealt with. So somebody calls you and says, hey, you took out this $5,000 loan with us and you haven't paid it. That should be a red flag. And again, IRS reports indicating that more than one person has filed a tax return using your social security number. So one of the ways that I encourage people to really stay on top of what your credit looks like, who's listed on there, is to review your credit report at least annually. So you are able to get a free credit report from annualcreditreport.com. And that will be one of the websites that you'll have a direct link to, where you're going to plug in your information and pull your credit. And on your credit report, you're going to see everything. I mean, pages and pages of things. Any car loan you had, any credit card, any mortgage, all of that's going to show up there. And you're going to really want to pay attention to everything on there. You'll also want to pay attention to the names on your credit report. So I pulled a credit report for myself and the name Paula Burton showed up. I've never been known as Paula Burton. My maiden name is Wilson. And Paula Burton apparently does not manage her credit well. So on my credit report, it had things from this other Paula, and so I had to file a dispute. There are 3 providers on annualcreditreport.com. So you can actually pull credit reports throughout the year from the different providers. So I recommend to my bank customers to actually pull multiple times throughout the year just to keep an eye on it. So let's talk about fraud. Some common fraud red flags. I'm sure, and I'd love to see a raise of hands, you guys get calls a lot, right? You get calls from people that you don't know who they are, and they get you on the phone, and what happens is they're fast and furious. So they are trying to create a sense of urgency when a scammer gets you on the phone. They won't take no for an answer. So whatever the situation is, they won't take no. There's a video that Mike's going to send out after this, which is the perfect example of a scam call. And the scammer actually called the chief of police in a community here in the US. And so you'll be able to listen to their technique and how they're pushing, and they're pushing hard and they're pushing fast, and they have an answer to every objection. So you're going to get to hear that. Anybody who is asking you to send payment in gift cards or Bitcoin is fraud. So I had a bank customer come in here last year, and he asked the teller, "Do you sell gift cards?" And the teller said, "Well, yeah, we have Visa gift cards that we sell. They're $4, and you know, we load it up, you prepay it." And the customer told him, "Well, you know, DirecTV called and said, I can't mail a check anymore. I have to send it in gift cards." And the tellers are trained to listen for these red flags of fraud, and had the customer sit down with one of our bankers who actually sat down with the customer. They called DirecTV together, and DirecTV said, "No, that wasn't us." Anytime somebody's asking for payment in a gift card or Bitcoin, that's fraud. No legitimate organization is going to require that of you. Wire fraud. Wire fraud happens a lot, where someone will call and say, "Well, just wire us the funds for this." Wire funds are incredibly dangerous, because once you wire the funds, that money's gone and there is no recourse to get those back. For younger generations, your grandchildren, maybe great-grandchildren, there are cash apps on their phones that they now use that kind of do the same thing. So Zelle is one, Venmo, PayPal. And so they will send money to another person via the app. Well, once they do that, the money's gone. And so just being really mindful of that. Those apps are very dangerous. One of the other red flags when you get on a phone call is they will tell you, don't tell anyone. Don't tell your family. Don't tell your bank. The bank is the enemy. They're going to try to talk you out of this. Don't tell anyone. You're going to hear background noise in many cases. So these scammers are actually mostly overseas, and they work in call centers. So these are international crime rings that are getting your data. They're making the phone calls to here in the US. And so you'll hear background noise, and really pay attention to that. Another red flag for fraud is maybe sometimes you get a check in the mail and you're not exactly sure what it's for. When that happens, bring it to your bank, have them look into it and investigate it, because many times that's part of a scam as well. So we're going to just jump into the most common scams that we've seen here, and I'm going to go through those. First is a sweepstakes lottery scam. And this is actually the scam that unfortunately is the reason why I'm teaching this fraud seminar. 2 years ago, around Christmas time, I had a customer come in the bank and tell me that she thought her husband was being frauded. And I said, "Tell me what's going on." And she said, Publishers Clearinghouse has called him and has said that we won, but he needed to send the money to pay the taxes ahead of time. And so over the few weeks leading up to this conversation, he had been taking small amounts of money and has been buying gift cards and sent it to them. So I took a look at his account, and he had already sent $4,500 out to these scammers who said they were Publishers Clearinghouse. And he was out in the car. He didn't want to come inside and talk to me because, again, the scammers told him that the bank doesn't want him to have this money. They don't want him to be successful. And I said, you know, I'm pretty sure you're being scammed. I said, Publishers Clearinghouse does not call people. They say that on their website. And, you know, he never entered. So again, if you don't enter, you can't win. And he said, "Well, no, I'll call." And he called, and we got a voicemail, and the voice on the other end was a foreign voice. And I said, "Sir, I'm telling you that you're being scammed. Like, this is not legitimate." I After that point, we did get it stopped. We had to work with his family to help convince him that it wasn't a real thing. But again, he had already sent $4,500 out and lost those funds. So anytime you get a call, you won the lottery, you won a sweepstakes, you won this contest, if you didn't remember entering it, you're probably not going to, it's probably not real. And again, a legitimate sweepstakes will never ask you for money up front. They just won't. The next scam are charity scams. So we as Americans are very, very generous. We want to help everyone in need. And unfortunately, scammers take advantage of that. So some common charity scams that we see is anytime there's a hurricane or a tornado or some type of disaster, there are many scammers who will call saying they're from Red Cross or another organization, and they're raising funds to help with whatever that disaster is. There's a lot of charity scams of people who call who say they're from veterans organizations or sick children. So again, more than likely, the Red Cross is not calling. They're not contacting you by that way. But, again, we want to be mindful, right? So one of the things I encourage my customer to do is to hang up the phone and call the Red Cross directly or whatever organization that said they were calling you. And if you are going to give using a check or a credit card. Because again, if it is not legitimate, we do have some recourse to get funds back from a credit card or a check. But if they ask you to donate through a gift card, virtual currency, or wire transfer, it's really probably a scam. We don't see a lot of these in the Dane County area. We have seen the grandparent scam. And this is where a scammer would call and they will pretend to be one of your loved ones. So some telltale symbols of this are the caller will usually start off and it's going to sound similar to this. Hey, Grandma, it's me. They're not going to say a name. They're not going to say it's me. And the scammer will just kind of go on and give you the story. So Grandma, I did a really stupid thing and I was arrested last night and I'm sitting in jail and I need some money for bail. You got to get me out of here. It's scary. And they're just talking. They're talking quickly. They might even pretend to be crying. And they're again, the fast and furious is to get you off balance, to really understand that before you have time to think through the scenario. And so they might ask, can you send money via MoneyGram or Western Union, or can I get your bank routing number and account number? And the jail will automatically debit. But what they're trying to get at is obviously your heart for your grandchildren. So there's a couple tactics that you can use with this. They may even say, for instance, let's say someone calls you and they say, well, Grandma, I'm in jail. And you say, well, did you call your mom? And the scammer will be like, oh no, Mom would kill me. Like, I can't tell Mom. But again, they don't want you to reach out to Mom and say, hey, so-and-so is in jail. They want to just get you to react. So one of the things that you can do right away, if you hear a call and it's like, hey, Grandma, it's me. Oh, who is it? You can just ask the question, who is it? And don't volunteer information. Don't say, hey, Grandma, it's me. Oh, is this Paula? Yeah, it's Paula, Grandma. Ask who it is. Because you know your grandchildren. Their voice may be hard to discern on the phone, but their names, I guarantee you, if you ask the question, who is this? You're going to hear a click on the other end because they realize that you're wise to that scam. So again, in any of these scenarios, just slow the conversation down. Try to get them to tell you who they are because you'll be able to discern, no, this is not my grandchild. And again, just be super careful with any sort of information that you're giving to them as well. Our next scam that we're going to talk about is the romance scam. So during the pandemic, when we were all locked up at home, this was the most used scam by scammers. And again, these are international crime rings from overseas who are scamming people out of their money. So what the scammers do in this situation is maybe you're on websites and they befriend you. So maybe it's a dating app, maybe it's something else, but they take the time to get to know you. And they just build that trust. Just like talking to an old friend on the phone, they're doing that via the computer. So they take time to build trust and affection. It's called love bombing. And it could be a couple weeks, it could be a month. Couple months, it could be a year that they've gotten to know you before they actually ask for money. But then they will eventually ask for money and say, you know, I live in Colombia or wherever it is, and I can't pay my rent this month. Is there any way you could send me $200? And so the asks at the beginning are very small. I need to make a rent payment. I need to do this. I need to whatever it is. And as time goes on, they ask for more and more. But again, they're spending time with you. They're talking to you. They're getting to know you. They're building a relationship. So some red flags with this. They ask to move the relationship, friendship off the dating app. Why? Because it might be flagged for suspicious behavior. If you ever say you want to meet them, they might tell you that they either live or are working outside the US, which is why they can't meet you in person. This scam is the hardest for banks and other, financial providers to, really convince the person they're being scammed. Because again, they've taken the time to build these relationships with you. And now, they're asking for something in return. The next scam we're going to touch on briefly, and I'm really just giving you a high level on all of these. But the next scam we are going to touch on is email and internet scams. This we have seen a ton of, every week. So you're on your computer, like maybe you are right now, and a pop-up, shows up and says your virus protection is out of date. And you might risk, getting your information hacked. And it gives you a phone number to call. So I had a customer that had this happen to them. So they called the number. They talked to the people. They gave the scammer access to their computer. So they were able to get into their computer. They gave them access to their online banking with the bank. So the scammer has access to the computer. They're controlling what their computer is doing. They're in their online banking. And finally, our customer realized, oh my God, I think this is a scam. So she closes out the computer. She gets in her car. She drives to the bank, which is probably a 4-minute drive from her house. She walks up to me and says, I think I've been scammed. And I said, okay, let's go in my office. Tell me what happened. And she's telling me what happened. And she said, I gave them control of my computer. And I said, okay, stop, hang on 1 second. And I called over to our operations department. I said, shut down her online banking now. And they did. So they shut down her online banking, and they said, did she just set up bill pay? And I asked the customer, she said, no. In the 4 minutes that it took her to drive over from the branch, they had already gone into her online banking and they set up online bill pay. And with online bill pay, they could have transferred her money right out of their account into their own. 4 minutes. That's how quick they work. And so again, this is one of those dangerous pop-ups. Don't call the number on the pop-up. Don't give anyone control of your computer. Take it to a reputable source. So if you have a computer place that you go to, even Best Buy has the Geek Squad, take it to a reputable source. If you think, I'm not sure if my virus protection is up to date, I got this pop-up, I don't know what to do with it, take them to them. Don't call any numbers, don't give anybody control. Also, be aware of fake shopping websites. This happens a lot during the holidays. You know, Amazon has a lot of sales that happen, but some websites aren't actually Amazon. It's another reason to really shop local. So there's my one pitch for shopping local. And then ransomware, where again, a hacker takes control of your computer and then they hold your information ransom for you to pay them. The next one I'm going to touch on is text scams. So this text that you see on your screen here, where it says your package delivery has been suspended due to a missing house number for your package, please update, actually came to my phone. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, you guys are something else trying to scam with texts. What they do is, they send this link, you click on the link that's kind of in blue hyperlinked, and then it says, look, your package has been suspended. You need to update your account information or your debit card information or your credit card information. And you plug in that information and it has nothing to do with an actual package, but now they have your debit card number and will drain your bank account. So anytime you see a text like this, just ignore it. Anything that says we have identified unusual activity on your account, please log in. Don't log in. If you have a question, call whoever you're working with to see about that. If you see something postage due, it's not postage due. The post office, bless their hearts, they're old school. If they have postage due, you're going to get a little sticker in your mailbox saying postage due. They're not going to send you a text. But again, don't click on the links and don't call the numbers if you see one of those texts come through. IRS scams. These aren't as frequent anymore, but we do see them from time to time where, you know, around the time when we're all filing our tax returns, that the IRS calls and says, you haven't paid your taxes. I will tell you, and I have a link there, and it's actually going to be one of the links that Mike sends out so you can read more about them. The IRS does not contact you through the phone. They're a government agency. They do snail mail, big time. So they will never reach out to you unless you've been getting mail for years and still haven't paid your taxes. Then they might come looking for you, but I know you guys aren't in that case. So just be mindful, if somebody calls, you know, that again, you're going to get a notice in the mail from the IRS. So what do you do if you think you've been frauded? So again, the biggest thing is stop contact with whoever you think you might be frauded by. So if it's on the phone, hang up. If it's on the computer, shut your computer down. And get some help, but stop any contact with them. If you provided any financial information like your credit card information, your bank account, your debit card, contact your bank or credit card company right away. So if I have a customer that calls me and says, I think there's this charge on my debit card, I don't recognize it, I literally click 2 buttons and that credit card is shut down. Nobody's going to get anything through that credit card. That debit card. So it is pretty quick. So if you, let's say you did purchase gift cards and sent them, report that to the issuer. So, you know, I've heard of customers that have bought Target gift cards as part of a scam, and they contacted Target. It's still very difficult to get your money back, but, you know, it's worth a try. And then it allows them to know if they're being scammed. If you provided any personal information like your social security number, you might be at risk for identity theft. So one of the things you're going to want to do is really consider placing a freeze on your credit. And what a credit freeze does is it stops any potential person from pulling your credit. Even like, let's say you have a credit freeze on your account, but you apply for a new car loan at Bank of Sun Prairie. I can't pull your credit or even think about extending your credit if you have a freeze on your account. You can unfreeze it very easily if you need to get credit for some reason. But you know, I have a freeze on my credit all the time because I don't need it. So why leave myself open for that? And then save all information and messages provided to you by the scammer. So you might need to, provide this information to the bank or law enforcement or anything like that. And again, be sure that you're monitoring your credit report. Where to report fraud. So besides the Bank of Sun Prairie, your bank, not just Bank of Sun Prairie, but anywhere, there are some places to report the fraud online. And what this does is it allows the FBI to see what's happening. So there's an FBI link that you'll get in your email. There's a tool that the Better Business Bureau has, which is phenomenal. It's called Scam Tracker. So you can actually go on the Better Business Bureau's website and go to the Scam Tracker and look up and see what scams are happening in Dane County. And you can actually read reports of scams that are happening in this area. So it's also important to report it there so others know as well. And then in Wisconsin, we also have the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. So that's another area where you can report the fraud. We're happy to help here at Bank of Sun Prairie. This is one of our missions. And even if you're not a customer with us, if something seems out of the ordinary to you, you are more than welcome to contact me. I don't care if you're a customer or not. I'm happy to help in any regard. And I'm sure all of your banks and financial institutions are as well. If you have a trusted financial advisor, if you have a trusted contact through RSVP of Dane County, maybe, on the east side of Dane County, we have Colonial Club that functions as a senior center. Reach out to one of them because they definitely want to help you as well. So with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen so I can see what comments and questions you all have. So I'm going to look at the chat box here. Okay, couple of things. So, okay, so Mike said, I use a credit report monitor called Savvy Money that sends me a note when there's a change to my credit score. Is this a type service common at most banks? Different banks use different software. So that is one tool that's out there. But really the holy grail, the gold standard is really pulling your credit report. Because any sort of third-party monitoring service, is good. Let's see. Beverly mentioned she changed equity loan at the bank. Now she's constantly getting mail and calls about owing money in mortgage deals. So here's something interesting. When you apply for a loan at a bank, there is, because of fair lending laws that the federal government puts banks under, there is something that goes out. So if you apply for a loan with us, it shows that you applied for a loan with us, and it is reported out kind of in the banking universe that this person has applied for a loan. Because of fair lending laws, anybody can purchase that information and contact you directly, because the fair lending laws want people to have the ability to see, are you getting a fair rate? Like, are you getting a fair rate from Bank of Sun Prairie? And so you might receive a call from another lender, for instance, that offers you a different rate. You can opt out of that. And I will find the link for that about how to opt out from getting those calls. But it's very concerning. And I've had a couple of customers who recently applied for car loans who are in the same scenario where they received a lot of calls, and they may be legitimate. But unfortunately, the federal government allows that to happen. So another comment from Susan, do we need to look at the website address to make sure it reads HTTPS instead of HTTP? Absolutely. The S on HTTPS stands for secure. So that means that that website has extra protection and encryption to protect your information. There are some websites that have it, but are still vulnerable. So Walmart.com, don't use it. Do not order from Walmart.com. They have a ton of fraud that gets reported with them, unfortunately. So even though it may say secure, we know that it happens, but that definitely is an extra layer of protection as well. Let's see, there's another scam appearing where people list vacant property or offer something for rent. They take the down payment or rent deposit. If you are in a situation where you are looking for new housing, definitely do your homework, and really make sure that, you know, you are dealing with a reputable place. So, yeah, and again, there's help for that, in the Dane County area with housing. But yes, there's that scam as well. And Jim says the FTC has a great website for info about protecting your credit. Absolutely. You know, there should also be information on annualcreditreport.com. Another question, have you seen situations where legitimate businesses like hotels initially process a small fee before booking a reservation? Yes. So the reason they are doing that is when you're booking a reservation, they are testing to make sure whatever credit card or debit card you're putting in there is a valid card. One of the things that actually happens, which is kind of interesting, if you guys travel a lot, always use your credit card when you're traveling. One thing that happens is when you check into a hotel, and you give them your debit card, they are going to what's called pre-authorize your debit card for the amount of your full stay. So let's say you're saying for 4 days, it's $600. They're actually going to pre-authorize that full dollar amount on your card. And you are not going to be able to use your card if you don't like have a lot of money in your bank account. So we get calls all the time, and there is nothing that the bank can do about that. So when a card is pre-authorized for a hotel purchase, that is controlled by the hotel, and they're the only ones that can take that off. We as the bank have no recourse. So it's been a situation where people are actually overdrawing their account, or, you know, they're in Mexico and now they can't buy dinner because the hotel's got a huge hold on their card. This doesn't happen with credit cards. They can pre-authorize it, but generally you have a credit limit that's way beyond that, that allows that. So using credit cards for any sort of travel, again, is a much better option. It's much safer. Mike, we've kind of talked through the questions on the right-hand side. I don't know if there's any more, or if you want to open it up for verbal questions.
Yeah, anyone who would like to, Lisa is connected to the police department over in Oak Creek. Lisa, have you been seeing anything going on over there?
Yeah, we have seen our share of fraud. I continue to actually do talks with some of our senior groups, and we actually do see a lot of the romance scams. We see a lot of the we actually get a lot of calls about the grandparent type scam. I guess you know, we're also seeing, you know, just some of the things that you've talked about where people give up control of their computers. So we are seeing quite a bit of it, and it's been really it's been significant in our area.
What are you doing to try and educate people? I mean, you can't, it's hard to say educate somebody, but give people the opportunity to learn about how to prevent this. I mean, we're doing these type of programs. We'll have a scams and frauds program at the Triad conference. We had one a couple of months ago from another angle. Are you doing anything in Oak Creek that you would recommend others try?
Well, we're actually, so like I said, I go out and do senior talks with some of our community residents here in Oak Creek. We actually have National Night Out coming up in a couple of weeks, and as an offshoot of our National Night Out, we're doing a senior day. Specifically, it's actually going to be a couple of days before that. And we have a series of speakers that are going to be at this event, one of whom is from one of our local banks that is going to be talking specifically about senior fraud. Because I end up doing a lot of infographics and things on social media, but I recognize that my primary audience isn't necessarily on social media. So that's why we've been trying to get out into the community and talk to people. So we're hoping to get, get some ears out there and, and an audience out there for this senior day.
Lisa, I'm Jim Jenkins, and I'm an RSVP volunteer. And at one of my volunteer stations is the Madison Police Department, where I follow up on self-reports, and we get lots and lots and lots of these different scams. Are you guys in Oak Creek able ever to follow up and actually initiate an investigation of these things?
Yes, I know that our detectives do, work with the victims, but unfortunately, as Paula has mentioned, quite often there really isn't. There's no way for people to get the money back. I mean, we do see the gift card scam quite a bit, and that money is just gone. So I know that they do some investigations, but quite often, I know I ran a fraud report back in March, and in March we already had like 23 reports of fraud, and most of them were unrecoverable.
Yeah.
And the hard part is, the police departments obviously have limited capacity, but the hard part really is most of these are coming from overseas. These are international crime rings. And so even if we did have more resources, there's no recourse. I mean, there's no way to go over and arrest a crime ring in another country, so that's the hard part, right? They can follow the trail, the computer trail, only so far. So that's the unfortunate part.
Yeah, I would agree.
No, to be honest, there are some scams that are happening locally, where, for instance, MG&E, you might have seen on the news, was victim of scams, where they had people locally here calling seniors saying, we're going to cut your electricity off if you don't pay us with a gift card. And they actually showed up at people's homes. So sometimes it happens where it's a local situation, but not all the time. And I would say this, you're going to get a lot of phone calls. Hang up. Hang up or don't answer. If you don't have caller ID, get caller ID. You're going to know your children's numbers. You're going to know, your best friend Betty's number. You're going to know those numbers. And if it's a number you don't recognize, don't even answer it. Or if you do, just be really mindful. So this MG&E scam that happened last summer, I had a senior that took one of these classes that I did in person, and she got the call. This is MG&E, and we're going to cut off your electricity, and you need to send a gift card. And she was like, I always pay my bill. And she just hung up the phone with them, and she got off the phone and she sat for a second, and she said, even have MG&E. I have We Energies for my electrical provider. And then she was just so excited she had to call me and tell me about it. But again, just hang up. Just hang up, because they're going to push and push and push. And you can always call back. You can always call MG&E directly. Hey, I got this call. They said they were from MG&E. And just do some research. They won't mind. In fact, that then alerts them that somebody is calling in their name. So they're happy to help.
I wanted to bring in Sonia Commissar from the Coalition of Wisconsin Aging Group. Sonia, would you offer a few things that you've seen in your work?
Sure. So we're statewide, and I currently am working with a couple. One of them is a victim of a home improvement scam where they've lost well over $100,000 to a home improvement scam, where it started out with the roof repair. And in these scams, It starts out with some issue that is known, but then when they're in there doing the work, oh, we see you have this issue. Typically, it's in a location in the house that the older adult can't visit because of physical limitations. So it'll be something in the attic potentially. In this case, it was a mold issue, which was legitimately true. It's just part of the scam is that they then will do one room at a time. They rip everything apart so that you have to keep going. It's shoddy workmanship. She's now discovered that all the work that he did do is going to have to be ripped out and replaced. But they get it in, and then this woman did, as you say, they want to develop a rapport. Sat down at the table with this woman. She has no family nearby, lives alone, fairly isolated. And they sit with her at the table. They bring in their children to meet the children. So you're less likely to prosecute because, you know, it's just not him. It's going to affect his kids. So we don't want to get him criminally charged. It's only till she did speak up to somebody that was noticing what was happening and how long the repairs were going and could then tell from the road how bad the workmanship was that she got some assistance. And then she went through the local ADRC office, who then brought me in to help. But it's going to be hard to criminally charge. It's hard to get district attorneys to do that. Once they have the resources, they squirrel them away, they hide them away, transfer them out. So even if you tried to sue them, are you going to get any money back? So it's very unfortunate that this woman was convinced that this was proper, everything was legitimate until so much money was gone. Another issue that I've been dealing with is I have a victim of the sweepstakes. It's not the lottery, but very similar, where chances are it's international and the woman does have some cognitive disabilities. So she's fallen victim to this repeatedly. She gets the calls. If you're not familiar, how that scenario typically works is you've won. And again, as was said, if you didn't, you can't win if you never played, right? And but she kept falling for it. And what they tell you is to receive this $1 million prize, you first got to prepay the taxes. You got to pay a processing fee. And they want a wire transfer of these fees. But yet this woman never won. And then she's got another phone call, because once you give, and once they know that you've been a victim, you're just going to constantly get these calls. And that's what's happening. She's repeatedly been targeted and she keeps doing it. Now, I was just explaining, so I have a volunteer sitting in here. In this particular case, she was doing cash advances and then sending the money. So some of it was literally sending cash in the mail, but oftentimes it was then going and buying a gift card and then calling in with the numbers. But at some point they got greedy and they asked for a wire transfer. Her bank, she has her main bank. They spotted it, notified the agent under the power of attorney saying, hey, this is a problem, and they wouldn't process it. So they did what they were supposed to do. But this victim, so motivated, she went to her local credit union where she has like the Christmas, what we used to call the Christmas savings account. She had a little savings account set aside at the credit union. They were not as diligent as Paula's bank and her other bank, this woman's other bank. She didn't have much money in that account. What they did is they gave her a loan for $3,000 and then facilitated the wire transfer for her to the scammers. So now her son, who's the agent, paid off the loan. And the problem gets to be, because they're so motivated, this woman's not mad about the fact that the credit union gave her the loan so that she could do the scam. She's mad at the original bank for interfering and contacting the agent, because now the agent's upset. He's tracking the damage that's been done because he wasn't aware of any of this happening. And she's angry with the son. Because he's trying to stop her from losing any more money. She's angry with the bank that did the right thing to intervene so she wouldn't get the money transfer process. And she wants all her banking done, moved to the credit union that gave her the loan to transfer money to the scammer. So that's the most egregious example. And what I tell people is not all banks are as diligent in addressing this problem and proactive as the Bank of Sun Prairie is being and other banks around here. So those are issues that I have victims that have come to me, and I am trying to help as best I can. What I typically do is if somebody does fall victim, the bank doesn't step in and they're victimized, I can go in then and I try to help, stop the bleeding, as we say. We want to get things shut down so they can't do it anymore. Bring in whatever community supports, whatever support and actions they want, to try to assist them to get them stable so they can move forward as confidently as they can, which is hard because once you've fallen for these scams, you start questioning your judgment. And it's not an easy fix. Like my poor woman with the home improvement scam, she's lost her savings, her life savings, basically trying to fix a house. That now, is she going to be able to sell it? Because she can't sell it in its current condition, because all this work needs to be redone, and she still has a mold issue because he never addressed the problem. So now she's out of resources. She's got a house that she's going to have to try to get rid of that's in no fit state. And we try to refer people to agencies. We try to refer to the Elder Rights Project is somebody. So if somebody is scammed, if there is a possibility of getting money back by suing in court, we typically try to refer people to the Elder Rights Project that is grant funded like we are, that can sue people in court to try to do that. But they are also looking at the possibility and what the success rate will be, because you don't want to necessarily go through the stress of recovering, trying to recover these funds. Court's stressful. Doesn't matter who you are. Even for the attorneys participating, it can be stressful. It's time consuming. And so they don't take all the cases that come their way because they want to look to see if it's worth the stress on the victim to go through that process. And also, I don't know about your experience, Dane County is very good about the police here, and the DAs are very good about addressing this problem and are willing to charge. Not all the counties in the state are as willing to take these cases, charge people criminally, even though they are crimes. For the same reason. We want to see more of it. We're working on it. There's a lot of education going. And again, it comes down to resources. But so being proactive and taking the steps that have been explained to try to protect yourself, it's better if you can keep your money in your pocket than try to get it back, whether it's criminally or civilly. So you take all these trainings that you can do, whether it's done, no matter where and who's doing them, and learn as much as you can on the subject. The more you hear about it, the more likely you are to retain it and apply it in your life. Because if you can keep it it's far better than trying to retrieve it, because there's no guarantees. And I can tell you a lot of what we do is just stopping the bleeding, because you wire transfer money out of the country, you're not going to see it. They can make efforts. There's some efforts out there to try to recover, but it's such a low percentage. Try to keep it in your pocket as best you can by utilizing the tips that you hear in any presentation you attend.
You brought up some great points, Sonia, and I just want to follow up on a couple of things super quick. Not every bank has the same levels of protection, right? So you really hit on that. But I would also say, no matter where you bank, if you have, maybe you've banked there for 50 years. So we have customers that, have banked with Bank of Sun Prairie forever. If you have a teller that asks you for your photo ID, please don't be angry with them and say, I've banked here for 50 years. They are trying to protect you at the end of the day. And even, if the teller strikes up a conversation and asks you questions, again, they're making sure that you are safe. So one of the things we do here is if you withdraw a certain amount of money, a bank teller, and now mind you, I've got high school kids who are tellers, but they're trained. They have what's called a fraud protection form. And they will go through the red flags of fraud with you when you're withdrawing a large amount of cash to make sure that you've thought about, am I taking this money to go buy gift cards? Right? They're going to ask you some questions about that. And they're not being nosy. Like, I don't, if you want to go to Ho Chunk with your $3,000, great, like have at it. But if you're going to buy gift cards, like we want to have a conversation with you about that. And so we really are trying to protect you. So again, the bank is really trying to look out for you. So don't get upset about showing an ID or on the phone having to give additional information. We're just looking out for you the best we can. So.
I had a question about, if you do use your debit card and it's not connected to any other accounts other than that one account, like I had a debit card that went to my checking, and that checking was connected to savings accounts down the line through overdraft protection. And, I didn't keep too much money in the checking account because I don't write checks anymore. And I thought, well, not having too much in there would keep me from getting, scammed through my debit card. But it didn't, because I had overdraft protection, and it just started sucking money out of the savings accounts.
Yep. Yeah, that's the downside to having an automatic overdraft protection or an automatic sweep from another account. That is dangerous. So yeah.
Yeah. It's better to face a $30 overdraft fee than to have a couple thousand taken in a quick scam someplace.
And honestly, if you told me that you were scammed and that's what caused you to overdraft your account, I'm going to refund that overdraft fee to you too. So just know that, like, when somebody's scammed, we're going to move heaven and earth to try to help, and whatever that takes. So.
I have just a general question, if I may, or a comment, I should say. With a lot of, or actually the majority, it seems, of these scams originating from phone calls we receive. If you are using a cell phone, and more people are going to cell phones, if in fact you are using a cell phone, you can go into settings and set it up to where the only people that can make your phone ring, call you, are those who are in your contact list. Now, the caller, if they aren't in your contact list, can still leave a message, so you can see from voicemail messages if it's important. But that is a way to eliminate all of the scammers and bogus calls, robocalls. And I just wanted to make that known, because since I've done that, it's made life much more pleasant. No phone calls in the middle of the night, whatever. So just wanted to throw that out, as that is an option if you are in fact using a cell phone.
Yep, great advice. Thank you.
Who else? We still have a little time here.
So I had a question. You mentioned that you have a lock on your credit all the time. Could you explain what that means?
Yeah, so yep. And I will see, I'll include in the links to Mike, I'll include a link about credit freezes for you guys. So basically you just set it up, you verify your identity online, or you can do it via the phone. And you have to have your social security number and different things. And then all you have to do is say, I want to place a freeze on my credit. And then what they will do is they will give you usually a confirmation number, and they'll give you like a PIN number of some sort that you're going to write down, so that when it's time to unfreeze your credit, you have to use that PIN number. So for me, I wrote it down, all of my information's on a piece of paper, and it's locked in a safe at home. So it's just, what they'll do, what the credit bureau will do to verify your identity is typically like pull from your credit report. So they might say, they'll pull information like, did you ever own a, Chevy Malibu, right? Or they'll give you like options, and that's how they're going to verify you are who you say you are. Because even though you might have a social security number, so might a scammer. But the scammer's not necessarily going to know if you had a Malibu or a Nissan, or, what street you grew up on, or other questions. But I'll send information on a process to freeze credit.
Can you tell me what the difference is between a credit freeze and a credit lock with the credit bureaus?
So I think it's just the terminology that they use. So it's just, both do the same thing. Both lock it down. Both are just, you're not able to get credit when you've got a freeze or a lock on your credit. So yeah, I've heard both terms used.
Okay, the reason I asked is I believe it was on Experium when I put the freeze on. They also had a locked option, so there were two different options.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know if that was just with that particular credit bureau or if others utilize that differentiation between a lock and a freeze. And just one other comment, when you put a freeze on your credit bureaus, if you are applying for credit card, whatever, you have to remember to take the freeze off for them to pull the credit report. And usually you can ask them which of the 3 credit bureaus they use so that you can only do a freeze with that one credit bureau. And when you're, I should say, unlock the freeze. And when you're unlocking it, you can use, or you can also indicate how long you want that freeze to be lifted so that it automatically goes back on and you don't have to remember to go back into your account and freeze it again.
Yep, exactly. And Susanna about clarification. It doesn't lock credit cards just applying for new credit card or loans. Is that right? Yes. So it's only when somebody tries to get new credit in your name. That's what it's locking down. Most credit cards, I will tell you though, do have a lock feature. So whether you call or do it online, you can actually lock your credit card. So there was one day, I don't know what I was doing, but I moved my credit card from a wallet somewhere else, and then I couldn't find my credit card. And I went to the credit card website and I locked the credit card. So if I had lost it, nobody else could use it during that time. Well, I found the credit card, went back online and unlocked it. So there's a lot of tools that way. So, but I will tell you too, if you ever have debit card fraud on your debit card, the bank we have to shut that debit card down forever. So because your number's been compromised, and yeah, you may need to get groceries or something else that day, but you won't be able to dispute any transactions if it's not locked down. And in most cases, most banks, like if I shut down a debit card, you can come right here to the branch and I can print you out a new one right away. Like literally it takes 10 minutes. So, but just know if the bank says we have to shut this down, they actually have to. So.
Anything else?
I think, like I said, Mike's going to have a list, and Mike, I'm going to reformulate the list and resend it to you with all the different resources that we talked about. It'll also have my contact information. So you're welcome to reach out to me directly, but we'll send that out a little bit later.
Yeah. It takes me a few days. I'm pretty busy right now getting ready for the Triad conference, the big prep work. And so I'll edit this, cut off the end and the start and put in the bookmarks. It takes a few days. So sometime next week, I'll have the recording up and we'll get everything to everybody.
What a great presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well then, thank you so much, Paula. Really do appreciate it. You've worked with Triad before when we had a group going in Cottage Grove, and we really appreciate your help.